TasTAFE is clearly an important and significant component of our education, skill development and training sector. I don't think anyone here would dispute that we need it functioning to deliver world-class education and training services. I also note that the Premier's address asserts, and I quote, "One of the strongest themes PESRAC heard in its consultation with business is the need for our training provider, TasTAFE, to meet the needs of a generation of young people and an influx of job seekers who need to quickly upskill and reskill to move across sectors as we recover from the structural impacts of COVID-19." End quote. Mr President, absolutely, we need to support the upskilling, reskilling and initial training of Tasmanians across all sectors and demographics. I don't think anyone needs to prosecute the case for that. What I'm concerned about, though, is the lack of a convincing case being prosecuted here that, firstly, TasTAFE is currently not or is unable to deliver on those expectations, and secondly, further, that corporatising this entity into a government business enterprise is the appropriate solution with whatever the perceived problem is regarding TasTAFE and its current capacity to deliver for Tasmanians seeking skill development and employers seeking skilled Tasmanians. To put simply, Mr President, I'm not convinced of the nature or extent of the perceived TasTAFE problem, nor am I convinced that the GBE proposal is the best solution. Unfortunately, this proposal does have the hallmark of a pre-COVID ideological agenda being implemented by stealth under the cover of COVID. And why do I say that, Mr President? Well, I look at how the GBE proposal is framed. Despite the government boasting that Tasmania's economy is far outperforming other jurisdictions, and I quote from the Premier's address, "We have the lowest unemployment rate for all the states and job numbers are at pre-pandemic levels." And further he says, "CommSec has Tasmania placed as the best performing economy in the nation for the 4th quarter in a row." And additional examples of business confidence and government support are also provided in the address. Despite all of that positivity, however, suddenly under the heading of skills and training, we discover there's a massive deficiency problem with TasTAFE. Such a problem, apparently, that is one of the, and I quote, strongest themes PESRAC heard in its consultation with business. This makes me wonder what PESRAC heard from the TasTAFE students or staff, however, or how the generation of young people feel, whom apparently the business sector is anxious that TasTAFE is not meeting the needs of. They may share, or they may have a different view to that held by the business sector. But neither the PESRAC report nor the Premier's address provides any insight into the perspectives held by these other involved stakeholder groups. If this survey conducted through the PESRAC process about TasTAFE was done in a different way, I think perhaps it might be decried as push polling. I do note that although TasTAFE appears on the consultation list provided on the PESRAC website and was involved in the cross-sector workshops, it does not appear that TasTAFE made a written submission during either phase 1 or 2. However, I did, Mr President, have a quick look at some of the stakeholders who did make submissions, such as the TCCI and the Tasmanian Small Business Council, who both made submissions to phase 1, neither of which mentioned TasTAFE. The TCCI did discuss the need for industry-led training services as opposed to training provider-led, and also called for a skills and workforce development fund, amongst other things. Interestingly, the Tourism Industry Council Tasmania submission, while also emphasising the importance of hospitality and tourism training, identified the current success of and need for ongoing further support of both the industry-led tourism and hospitality training organisation and the collaboration between the University of Tasmania and the tourism and hospitality industry, but makes no mention of TasTAFE, good or bad. Mr President, I do not intend to go through each and every submission received by PESRAC in this address. However, just for the sake of completion, it's also worth reviewing the 9 cross-sector workshops and the 3 regional roundtables also conducted by PESRAC, of which the summarised outputs and outcomes are available on the PESRAC website. Doing that review, you'll find that the Regional Workshop Summary of Outcomes report makes 2 mentions of TasTAFE. One was a call for more certainty and regularity for TasTAFE delivering training courses in the regions, and the other was to suggest moving the regional trade training centres from the Department of Ed to Skills Tasmania or TasTAFE. Of the 9 cross-sector workshops outcome reports, there were a handful of mentions of TasTAFE across workshops 2, 3, 5 and 7. The comments there ranged from TAFE being underutilised in workshop 2 that it, as well as UTAS, needed more flexibility, such as including provision for weekend courses, Workshop 5, to its role within the broader context of vet services supplied, Workshop 7, and the need for modernisation and different delivery models, Workshop 3. To sum up on this point, Mr President, it's not surprising, given the economic aspect of the pandemic crisis, for there to be focus across a range of PESTRAC participants on immediate and long-term skill development and retention. However, if there was extensive and persuasive evidence of broad-scale community and stakeholder dissatisfaction with TasTAFE to fulfil its role, it would be fair assumption that it would appear more extensively than we see in the PESRAC submissions and output reports, rather than the scant few oblique mentions that TasTAFE garners across 9 cross-sector workshops and 3 regional roundtables. We heard that apparently discontent with TasTAFE was raised by virtually all who participated in PESRAC. However, the materials provided by PESRAC do not appear to support that contention. Further, it's a little difficult to reconcile TasTAFE as underperforming when students won the following in the 2020 Australian Training Awards: Apprentice of the Year, Vocational Student of the Year. TasTAFE was also one of 3 registered training organisations nationally shortlisted as a finalist in the Large Training Provider category, of the Year category. Hence, Mr President, despite the effort made by the Premier's address to present the proposal to transform TAFE into a GBE as a solution, it remains unclear, to me at least, the exact nature of the problem. Undoubtedly, there's always room for improvement. However, unless we are clear on the exact nature of any problem or identified areas for change, how are we meant to evaluate whether the proposed solution is a good fit? Potentially, an appropriate way to test exactly where TasTAFE is fit for purpose, given current challenges and opportunities, and to also test whether the proposed solution addresses any identified problem, is to establish a Joint House Select Committee to examine the issue. This Parliament will be required to debate and sign off on any move to transition TasTAFE into a GBE. And a Joint House Select Committee would provide an appropriate and transparent mechanism by which to both inform ourselves that the solution fits the problem, as well as whose voices are being included in a discussion.